Hello and welcome. I'm Bryce Button with AJA, and today we're sitting here with Mooney from Adobe, and we're going to discuss some of the exciting new features in the new Adobe software, as well as interaction, of course, with the AJA products. So welcome, Al. Good to have you back.
Hey, Bryce. Nice to be here.
Well, likewise. So for folks that might not be as familiar with us as others, do you want to just give us a brief breakdown of, how the relationship with Adobe and AJA has formed and continued over the years?
Sure. Well, the way I kind of think about it really is that we're two companies, both who are completely passionate and dedicated about broadcast, post, TV, film, all of that stuff. Adobe's been making nonlinear editors since, I believe, the medieval times. It wasn't as good then as it is now, clearly, but we've been on this path for a very long time, and it's fantastic to see how much kind of success we're getting in the marketplace right now. But anyone who cuts video needs reference monitoring, needs tape ingest. You need reliable, robust, high-quality third-party hardware to integrate with, and AJA is just, the ideal company to offer that. So we've worked together for, as long as I've been in this job, and probably many years longer than that too.
Right. And it's been interesting to watch its evolution in the last couple of versions. So previously, for those who might not have realized it, we were actually writing our own player, for instance,
Correct.
on top of our hardware. And that changed in 6. Could you speak to that a little bit? Yeah,
so the way it used to work was a source of some frustration for our users. And, you and me both speak to users all the time, and if our users express frustration, then it's something we need to respond to. So the way it used to work in previous versions, CS5 and before, was, like you say, you had to build, AJA had to build a player. They had to decode the media yourselves. And we would support the player to some extent, but it meant that there was a number of limitations. It meant that you had to be very careful what formats you put on your timeline. It meant that you didn't get to harness the power of this thing that we always talk about, this thing called the Mercury playback engine, which is really the stuff under the hood that makes Premiere Pro fly. It's the stuff that processes all the effects and all the different types of media on the timeline, and the thing that when you hit play, the brain that makes it work. But with an AJA player, you couldn't actually get full access to that Mercury engine. And so every time you plugged an AJA box in or whatever, your performance went down, and that was unacceptable for users today. So in CS6, we built this thing that we call Mercury Transmit. The way I describe Mercury Transmit is it's a bit like we built a socket right in the Mercury playback engine. Right, we just built the socket, and all third parties like AJA need to do is build a plug. Plug right into the socket, we'll handle everything and just pass you video frames on the output. And it's just proven to be so much more robust and reliable as a result. Yeah,
so I mean, the point I wanted to get across there is for users that might have been sticking to older versions of software, it really does make sense, at the very least, to make sure that you moved up to CS6, because these kind of benefits are just brilliant.
Well, no, absolutely. And I mean, that's not obviously the only benefit. I mean, anyone who's still cutting on 5.5, I would urge to look at this version that we're talking about right here, and even CS6. I mean, we did so much work to make the experience of editing smooth and intuitive and fluid and just pleasant. We were aware that there was some areas where users felt interrupted or slowed down, and like that they were being sort of yanked out of the creative process, and that sucks. You don't want that to happen when you're cutting. So 6 and this version that we're talking about here, just really leaps and bounds. We've been consistently focusing on the editing experience, what it means and how it feels to sit in front of the application and just cut for those long edit sessions, and making sure it's a pleasant place to be.
Right, so let's talk about this new software.
All right.
So we've, as time always does, it moves on, and of course both our companies like to progress and get out ahead of the curve, and provide features and capabilities that people either have needed or weren't quite aware they were going to need.
They're my favorite kind.
Yes. Yeah. So what can we expect to see out of this new software, and specifically, for instance, with Premiere?
The way I describe it is, if CS6 was our kind of big editing UI release, you're not going to see big changes in UI this time around. We don't want to do that. We've had amazing feedback about CS6. It looks and feels like a modern video editor, and people really like cutting with it. And it's worth pointing out just at this stage that the market momentum we're seeing right now, just on the back of 6, has just been astounding. Tens of thousands of editors have switched either from let's just say switched from other platforms to start using Premiere Pro as their primary NLE. I've just come back from Sundance just a couple of months ago, or a month ago, And, 4 of the entries in the Sundance Festival were cut exclusively on Premiere Pro. Now, 4 isn't a terribly high number, but it really speaks volumes to the momentum that we're seeing. Next year, I bet you it'll be 20. So, we're just seeing this huge growth in the market, and it's a very, very exciting time for us. As you grow, of course, and you have more users, you have more people asking for stuff. That's, one of the advantages / disadvantages of it. So what we really wanted to address, initially at least with this release, is just continued editing finesse. We did a bunch of stuff in 6 to just improve the editing experience, but as more and more users are switching from Final Cut, there are certain workflows and things they just expect. So you're going to find, a much more fluid, sophisticated timeline showing really key visual information very, very clearly. When you're working on a tight deadline, you need to know if there's a duplicate frame anywhere on your sequence quickly. You need to know that that's a through edit. You need to heal the through edit. You need to move your clips up and down with keyboard shortcuts. And a huge amount of focus in this release on improving the keyboard-driven workflow and just making everything that you need to do fast, under your fingers, and intuitive. So you're going to see huge improvements, too many to list. But just editing in this release is a step even beyond what we had in 6.
Let's approach the topic of color, because color is obviously a continuously evolving science. Folks are realizing how much work they're having to do with it, whether it's dealing with raw workflows or getting the most out of their compressed footage. So both within Premiere and SpeedGrade, with this release, we've got a couple of new things going on here, don't we?
Absolutely, and just to agree with your point completely, I mean, color is becoming an increasingly important part of the workflow, and it's not limited to at the end of the workflow in the grading suite anymore. You've got people doing first light grading and editors who want to cut to the aesthetic of a piece or an aesthetic instead of, washed out looking log C footage, for example. So, yes, there is also a new version of SpeedGrade, of course, in this release, and a slew of new features there, but from a Premiere perspective, what's really interesting is we've effectively taken the engine out of SpeedGrade, which is this thing called the Lumetri engine, and we put it in Premiere Pro. It's a lot more complicated than that, but that's a nice way of explaining it. By having the Lumetri engine, what that means is for the first time ever, Premiere Pro users can apply LUT files, or more interestingly maybe .look files, which is like a full description of color space, to their clips directly in Premiere Pro with no need to leave the application, no need to learn a different interface, effectively just drag a look onto a clip and work to an aesthetic. This comes alongside this thing we're calling the looks browser. So for someone who's never touched SpeedGrade and doesn't know how to export a look or whatever, you are going to be able to use the looks browser to apply a host of different amazingly beautiful looks all to your clips right in the timeline. Standard things like your bleach bypasses, your masks, your gradients and all this stuff, but just really bringing that footage alive and making it look so much richer and more vibrant.
So presets that you can use or presets that you can build yourself per project?
Precisely. So you can use the included presets. You can go out to SpeedGrade and export .looks. You can create your own or have someone who do it for you. It just means, like I say, color is coming increasingly sort of left in the workflow, and I really think people are going to be very excited by this.
So in terms of the implementation for monitoring, support, etc., with a card like KONA 3G, we're able to support 4K even in Premiere. And of course now when you're doing high-end color grading work with SpeedGrade, my leading question is this now supported with the new release? Yeah,
very much so. So Adobe's really all about, sharing technology. So there's other examples of this you'll see in the new version of Premiere Pro. You'll see a great deal of audio improvements, for example. We have a new plugin backend. We have control surface support. That was written for Audition, and we were able to port the code over. Why not? If we have this great diversity of products, why not do that? So with regards to AJA, what we've done in this release is we've taken Mercury Transmit, as described, from Premiere Pro, and we've put it in SpeedGrade. What this means is SpeedGrade users are now going to have vastly increased options for high-quality HD SDI monitoring. Like you say, we're seeing 4K just skyrocket. It's incredible how fast this thing is happening, and you need that high-quality output. And so yes, now SpeedGrade users are going to be able to use the same hardware that they use for their Premiere Pro system for the all the way through the process.
So here at AJA, we've been creating recorders for some time. Specifically digitally based recorders that can record compressed workflows. So in this case, we're now looking at the KeyPro Quad, which brings 4K into the workflow. Makes it pretty simple. So in other words, you're encoding ProRes onto a little SSD like this. and you can simply connect it to your computer, and off you go and start editing. So it's not like a RAW workflow, although it does support RAW workflows across Thunderbolt. I think most people will be using the 4K ProRes files. So that begs the question, how is your support for 4K within the current products in this release, and you know, where are we today with codec support in Premiere?
Well, so going back to what I said previously, our philosophy has always been support everything, and we do our very best to do that. In terms of 4K, you know, when we rebuilt Premiere Pro, which was the CS5 release, basically, that's when it went 64-bit and all these big things happened. We could kind of see in our magical crystal ball, and we've all got one at Adobe, we could kind of see that the world was moving towards higher resolutions and obviously higher frame rates and that kind of stuff. So what we wanted to do in CS5, while not many people were talking about 4K at the time, was make sure we built something that was as future-proof as possible. What you'll find is actually, if you the biggest size canvas that Premiere Pro can cope with is, I worked this out the other day for something else, it's about 9.2K.
Okay.
So very few people are working at 9.2K yet, but mark my words. So the answer is native 4K.
So let's talk about this. You've got some examples of 4K projects that have already gone through.
Oh, I mean, they're numerous. We've seen so many people use Premiere Pro to cut 4K because for a while it was just sort of really the only thing that could do it. We work very, very closely with the guys at Red as well to have you know, great support for their formats. And basically, you know, we don't care. We're effectively agnostic to how big the frame size is. But yeah, multiple examples. You know, the Sundance movies, a couple of those were 4K. Tom Lowe's 4K Timescapes projects. Just tons of 4K stuff's been pushed through the pipeline. So yeah, we love 4K. We like to think we're kind of right at the forefront of that and helping to pioneer its growth.
Good, and you know, and I think it's worth folks realizing and understanding that the KONA 3G specifically has a 4K mode, and the 4K mode does work within these releases, correct?
Very, very much so. You know, you can shoot the ProRes 4K to the Keyprobe box, bring it into Premiere Pro with your KONA, and you're just going to be able to output beautiful 4K as you edit.
Which is incredibly important, especially now that you bring in even more color tools into the
exactly.
workflow pipe.
I was talking to some friends just after Sundance, and I think this is a really exciting time for filmmakers. You know, there's 4K, so you've got ultra high resolution. There's high frame rate. We've not quite worked out what we want to do with that yet, I think, but it's a very rich, you know, addition to the palette. You've got high dynamic range, more and more cameras shooting HDR. So, you know, I think the way to think about all these technologies is not to be frightened that you've got to do them. It's just, you know, the palette for storytelling has just increased so much. So, you know, we just want to make sure we support all that stuff.
Can you speak to the evolution of the codec support and where we sit today with this current release?
I mean, I think the thing about RAW is sometimes it's ideal, right? There are certain projects where, you know, you want to get into that rich color metadata, and you've got the storage space and the bandwidth, and but like I say, everything's a choice, and there are times when RAW isn't necessarily the right way to go. We've always been about, you know, like I've said, supporting codecs natively, and we've still done that. We've added a couple of new formats to this release, but there are times when it's better or more advisable to go with an intermediate codec workflow. There's two really big players in the intermediate codec market. There's DNx HD and there's ProRes. People asked us to build our own one, and I kind of didn't really think that what the world needed was another video format, being, as I always say, there's a new one designed every 12 seconds. So what we've done with this release is gone, you know what, let's continue our native format support and add to it this concept of supporting the industry standard mezzanine or intermediate codecs. So now you're going to find that you're going to have native DNx HD in MXF, all the flavors, right inside Premiere Pro. And also, you're going to have the option. You're going to have ProRes as a fundamental part of Premiere Pro. Encode and decode on Mac, and decode on Windows. So, you know, the two industry standard intermediate codecs are just there right when you install the application. So it just gives you, more options to your workflow, really.
So that's pretty exciting. So that means for folks that are still considering their transition change in terms of NLEs, what they're used to, if it involved a ProRes encode or decode on the Mac, is going to be supported between our KONA cards and this version of software, correct? No,
exactly. And that feature actually pairs really nicely with something else we've done this release, which is really improved our support for bringing in sequence interchange formats. We've always been pretty good at XML from Final Cut 7 and before. That's been been improved quite a lot, so you're going to get higher fidelity and better performance. But we've focused a great deal on bringing AAFs in from an Avid workflow. Okay. So we now support the native DMX HD MXF media. You can export that AAF from Avid, bring it into Premiere Pro, and carry on where you left off. So anyone thinking about moving or just trying this product out, you can bring your projects in and carry on working in this new environment.
And I think it's key for folks to understand that may have, you know, from our perspective, that may have already had investments in AJ hardware. Right. We have the broadest support across all NLEs.
Sure.
So this effectively means, does it not, that you can stay on your KONA card as you move through to Premiere, and you've got all that fabulous support.
Very much so. I say this to a lot of people. You know, I understand that the people, you know, it's not an easy decision to make, to switch if you know something really well and you've got your system all set up. But if you're a Final Cut guy and you've got your Mac Pro and the KONA board in it, generally speaking, the chances are you'll just be able to download our trial. There's a free 30-day trial of Creative Cloud, just to point that out, you know, so you can try all the apps for free for 30 days. Install it on your system and just try it and, you know, see how well it integrates with the AJA card. See what performance benefits you're going to get by being a natively 64-bit application with all that horsepower. Just try it out. Switch it into Final Cut shortcuts mode, you know, move your projects in. Just try it. And you know, a lot of people in the world are moving to this platform, and I think you'll find that you're in really good company if you make that decision.
Let's talk a little bit about mobile workflows. So one of the key technologies that has made the mobile workflow just that much simpler over the last couple of years has effectively been the introduction of Thunderbolt.
Sure.
And in terms of our Thunderbolt products, for instance, at this point in time, we have the TTAP for broadcast monitoring for a lot of folks that maybe have recorded on Key Pros, as well as the IOXT. They can do both input and output. Sure. Have you found that people have really embraced these kind of mobile workflows with Premiere? It's
extraordinary. I mean, you look back 10 years and it would cost $50K to put an edit suite in, and you know, now you can buy an $800 PC and it's going to perform pretty damn well and whatever. So yes, very, very much so. Actually, we test a great deal on mobile platforms. Something that's great is that you're seeing more and more powerful GPUs inside these mobile workstations, as you might want to call them. So, you know, the latest crop of MacBook Pros and many of the Windows machines, we're now able to support the GPU. We've got OpenCL and CUDA on Mac and Windows this release, so more people get the power. You can just do so much on a portable workstation. But like I always say, you still need that critical monitoring. You're still going to need to be able to do it, even if you're just using that same machine and coming back to a suite and plugging it into something. So yeah, I mean, the portable devices you guys are making that go alongside Premiere Pro and its sort of support for these powerful systems is extremely important to the customer.
So, you know, one of the advantages that AJA has had compared to software manufacturers over going back a decade or so simply has been that we can roll out our drivers as we do regularly during the course of the year, in fact giving people new features for free.
Sure.
So you now, as of the Adobe CS6 release and continuing forward with this new release, you have something that works awfully similarly, don't you?
Yeah, so what we did with CS6 is start thinking slightly differently about how we sell our products to the customers. You know, historically, we've packaged a bunch of applications on shiny disks and put them in a box, called it Master Collection, charged a $2.5K or whatever it was for. And that was great, and people were used to that. But the world's changing, right? And people are more mobile, people use multiple machines, and everything is about being connected. So we came up with the CS6 launch with this thing that we call Creative Cloud. And what Creative Cloud is a different way to access our products by paying a small monthly fee. It's around $50 a month, right? And what that means you get is access to every single one of our creative products. You sign up for the account, you go to a web portal, register your 2 machines, download the apps and just use them. So the barrier to entry of getting access to these extremely powerful and diverse applications has dropped to, you know, something that most people are going to find reasonably affordable. The other great thing about a model like that is that it's easier to release more regular updates. It was always a little bit difficult for us to release features in between main releases, and what you're going to see the company start to evolve towards is a more dynamic way of releasing products where feature releases can be released more regularly. And in this day and age, like I said at the beginning, you know, we have more feature requests than ever before. It just means that we can be that bit more agile and kind of respond to the customers' needs more quickly.
That makes complete sense, and in many ways, you know, as we think about this, that means a Premiere user for instance, if you have a particular feature you would like to roll out, you no longer have to wait until another product is ready to go with this.
That's hopefully true. I mean, you know, I don't want to promise the world here. There'll still be things that we can't do. You know, we can never do everything we want to do. There's always a much longer list, and that's what makes this job so much fun. Is, you know, we've got to deal with multiple requests, and we've got to prioritize, and that will always be the case. But the point is, we will be able to release more regular updates with features in them, and I think that that's a really big benefit of becoming a Creative Cloud member. I mean, really, I think that coupled with all the kind of resource you get with Creative Cloud, there's training resource, there's a very real sense of community in the Creative Cloud pages, discussing, helping, sharing. It's just so much nicer a place to be as a creative than the guy with a dusty box on his shelf, you know?
Understood.
Yeah.
So let's talk to something specific for one area of our client base. Obviously, like Adobe, we've got clients across many different verticals.
Sure.
One of the areas that is important to us, considering our background, is, of course, broadcast. And broadcasters have a need, not just a creative need, they have a legal FCC mandate to support something called closed captioning. Yep. I understand in this release that we are seeing some improvements there with Premiere.
Very much so.
Speak to that.
Yes, I'd love to. So what we did before we started building this was, like we generally like to do, is we went and talked to a lot of people. And that's something that I'm really proud of, that we do regularly, and it's very important because it fuels us building what I hope remain, you know, relevant products for people. So we visited a great deal of broadcasters, and we heard time and time again, we need you to do some stuff with closed captioning. And the interesting thing was this. What we learned from these guys is that if I'm making a brand new piece of content, it's the captioning is almost always still going to be created by someone else. Now, it might be an outhouse that's part of your organization or a captioning house somewhere else, but that's still going to be the workflow. That's not going to change. And therefore, us building a complete closed captioning creation solution was not the right thing to do. Where the pain point was if I have a bunch of media that's in different places, you know, let's say I'm cutting together a documentary about somebody's life and I'm pulling in multiple different sources, that stuff's already captioned a lot of the time.
Right.
So it's ridiculous to cut something that's a bunch of you know, old footage and then have to go back out to the captioning house. So editors told us very clearly, broadcast editors told us very clearly, they wanted to be able to import the captions and keep them, make edits and adjustments to them, and export them. So those are the three key areas that we worked on. So you can bring closed captioning media in from files, in from tape. You can realign it. You can change wording. You can very, very simple. And you know, the thing about this feature and a lot of the stuff we do is we made sure we built it so that it's comfortable and familiar to a Premiere Pro editor. So the captions panel looks and feels very much like the marker panel. A caption clip looks and feels very much like a video clip. But you can move it around, edit, realign, adjust, sort of collating all the content that you have from these multiple sources, then export to tape via you guys or to a file. So that was really what broadcasters were asking us to do. And you know, I hope very much that we can speed up these closed captioning workflows significantly with this feature.
Fantastic. So in the case of our KONA cards or our I/O cards, but largely our KONA cards that have done this for years, we've preserved closed captioning coming in, you know, as part of the bank information. Yep. So will that be preserved across AJA KONA cards then?
If you preserve it on ingest, we'll keep it and we'll let the customers edit it. Yeah. I mean, this is an extraordinary feature. I never thought I'd get excited about closed captions. It was a bit of a, we're going to have to do this. It's not as sexy as some of the editing stuff, you know. But my goodness, the way it's been designed by our brilliant engineers, and I just have to stress that, you know, the engineers who've worked on this feature have been just blown my mind consistently by the way they've thought about how to build this feature and how to solve the problem. And it's very unique, and I think it's really going to save a lot of people a lot of time. And I'm very excited about it, which I never thought I'd say. So.
There you go.
Yeah.
So just to talk a little bit in terms of our two companies and moving forward and so on, you know, what is it that you value in the relationship with AJA? I mean, we know what we value in terms of our relationship with Adobe. Adobe is one of our key creative partners. Sure. And from our side, we obviously see a lot of interaction on the engineering level. But, you know, what are the values that you think are important in terms of the AJA brand for you? I
just think we work so well together. I mean, the fundamental fact is that we need you and you need us, right? Right. Customers need hardware and customers need the software to run. And so, I mean, that's the simple thing. But I think it goes above and beyond that, really. It's, you know, every time we're building something new. We're always working with you guys from, essentially, as soon as we know what it's going to be, we're working with you guys, with Mercury Transmit, the captioning workflow, the tape panel, all great examples of how, we're quite symbiotic. We'll develop together and such that, when we ship something, you'll probably be shipping something too, and it all works nicely together. I also think the way, a lot of people probably don't see this behind-the-scenes stuff so much, but the way that we deal with customers together is fantastic as well. There are examples where, we've had mutual customers with issues and we've gone together on site and helped solve that problem. We can go and talk to customers together and talk about a solution between us, and I think that's really unique and really powerful.
Well, Al, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure talking to you about the new releases. And here at AJ, we're thrilled to be releasing our products and drivers alongside them.
Likewise.
Thanks very much, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you again.